Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm Ahmet from Turkey, from ACM. Today, I'm going to introduce you a brand new framework called the Agility Path, which is designed to manage complexity that the companies do face through their agile transitions. But before diving into that, I want to talk a little bit about adaptiveness and change. It was February 2001 when 17 software gurus came together in Utah to talk about the problems in software development and to come up with some solutions, some new ideas to software development. And they came up with 4 values and 12 principles. We all know it. They said individuals and their interactions should be valued more than the processes and the tools being used, because it wasn't the processes nor the tools that develops the software. It's the people and their interactions. They said working software should be valued more than comprehensive documentation, because documentation is not the explicit way of delivering value. It was the working software that delivers value directly. And customer collaboration should be valued more than the contract negotiation, because we all know that things change and we should respond to change. And they said responding to change should be valued more than following a plan, because plans are not the ultimate goals. Plans are the tools, again, that we use to deliver value. So when we look at the entire picture, we can see an emphasis on adaptiveness and change. And the question here is adaptiveness important? Yeah, we all know that adaptiveness is important somehow, but is it so important to build, to construct all of our processes and tools on some values, on 4 values and principles? Yes, the answer is it's very important. It's very important to survive, actually. As Charles Darwin, British naturalist Charles Darwin states, it's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent. It's the one that is most adaptable to change. And how do we define agility in that sense? We define agility as the flexibility, capacity, and the capability of efficiently and deliberately adapting to change. So again, we have these 2 words, adaptiveness and change. So the change is the thing that drives adaptiveness, that makes us, forces us to be adaptable. So there are 2 realities with change. The first one is, as Heraclitus says, everything endures but change. Change is the only constant in the nature also. And the other thing is, it's faster than ever. Because we got the internet now, and it's like, the internet is like the opening of a new era maybe. Maybe 100 years later, people will be talking about the internet as an invention that opened a new era. And I think it will be that way. So it's fast. Now, let's look at how fast it is. Here is the mass use of inventions by the quarter of the US population. And as you can see, the vertical axis here is in the logarithmic plot. So, telephone took 35 years for the quarter of the US population to use. And television took 25 years. And PC took 17 years. And the web took only 6 years for the quarter of the US population to go online. And what else do we have here? We have, as I said before, here is the logarithmic scale, and this is an exponential curve. And what else do we have? We have a baby boom around here. And also, Tom DeMarco and Timothy Lister also made a research about the average lifetime of the products. So in 1984, it was 20 years, whereas when we came down to 2004, it's 7 years, the average lifetime of a product. And guess now, how often do we change our cellular phones? How often do we change our cars and clothes? We consume everything in a very fast fashion. And what do organizations consume? They don't consume the clothes, but they consume their processes. So the processes should be adaptable somehow. And when we define agility, we usually look at the situation like when you're agile, you define some processes, you have some frameworks, then you are agile. Doing agile doesn't mean that you're agile. It's a state of being. So you have to stay in that specific level of agility. And how are you going to know that? That's the very important issue. And here is a survey that IBM conducted on 2004 among 519 CEOs. The question was, what are your topmost primary challenges? They said sustainable growth and adaptation to changing demand. And also, the Economist Business Intelligence Unit made a survey too in 2009. And the question was, how important is agility to your organization's overall business success? And 88% of the respondents said that it's somewhat important, and 40% said it's extremely important for us. It's extremely important for us to take the advantage of the opportunities in the marketplace. So, from the market perspective, when we look at the situation from the market perspective, we see that volatility is a constant in the new economy. And we are all living crisis in the global economy now. And companies find themselves in a Houdini-like twist. Because you don't know what the competitor is going to do in the next step. So you have to respond to the things that he did in a very fast fashion. And you have to be quick and be nimble as we define agility. So those 17 software gurus, again, they also felt the pressure from the market that they have to change. They have to adapt to changing demand. So they have created the manifesto. And it's the framework for us now. We are using this framework, these 4 values, 12 principles, to guide our processes, to guide our lives, actually, in the organizations. So, from now on, I'm going to be talking about a Turkish bank in Turkey that we worked with, that we implemented Scrum successfully. But did they go agile? That's the question. And what I'm going to talk after that is how are we going to anchor agility to our organization. We need a systematical approach to anchor agility to our organization. That's called the Agility Path framework. So for the bank, we created teams. The first team, Scrum Pack. And this is a liability project. And the second one, Scrum Forever. It's a CRM project. And the third one, Scrum Center. This is the HR project in the company. And Kovan, it's like the bees. So that's a project for the IVR systems. And we had really good success. We succeeded with what we are doing with these projects. And here is the success that we had. It was 70% faster than the traditional project they did, the liability project. And the interesting thing was, we had an initial scope, and when we came to the end of the project, we only delivered 20% of the initial requirements. 80% changed during development, and customer was satisfied. Scrum Center, here is the HR scorecard projects. They were all waiting for the features to be delivered. But with Scrum, we all know that we are making iterative and incremental delivery, so we are much faster than waterfall. We can create time to market advantage very easily. And here, we got some learning because the team was cross-functional and the dependencies were slowing them down. So they created their own solutions for many cases, and they again managed a lot of change here. Scrum Forever, the CRM team, they were very productive, and they also managed too much change in the environment. Also, we had the IVR project. This project was a war, actually, between the business and the IT, because it was 2 years that the project wasn't delivered, and customer was waiting. So we used Scrum again, and in that time, we had a ready system, and we saw that the initial scope was a crap again. And what we saw in this bank was, we have some ideas, but those ideas are not coming at the beginning of the process. As the customer sees something, they got better ideas. And those better ideas drives the ROI, drives value. And corporate internet banking also. This was again a 2 years failure project. And it took only eight months to deliver the whole project, the entire project. And what are the artifacts that we had? We had the status reports and recommendation documents. We had many artifacts like these through the consultancy era. And we had Scrum versus Waterfall surveys through the entire organization. And we had Scrum Master meetings. The Scrum Master from all of the teams came together in 2 weeks and shared their experiences with the team. And also, we got some Agile performance metrics, not personal metrics, but team metrics and product metrics. And we use balanced scorecard framework to measure the progress, to measure the success. And the success of the bank's Scrum implementation was on the media in Turkey, because we were delivering good stuff. But we also had some problems. They got some gains, but we still having problems about anchoring agility into the organization. The problems, the gains at the first stage, the gains were they managed the initial scope, they managed change, they were more adaptable regarding the scope, and the customer was satisfied, because in the bank there was a war between the IT and the business units. They couldn't deliver anything on time. And they increased their productivity, they increased the time to market, and everybody was happy with Scrum when they are within a Scrum team. And when they get out of a Scrum team, they weren't so happy. They were just depressed. And we had a real strong management support when we were implementing Scrum also. It was a advantage that we had during that period. And what else do we have in Turkey? We have some local benchmarks, and as Agile Turkey, we are making some surveys to see how the situation is going on in the entire market. So what we saw is 45% of the respondents to that survey claimed that they have a project success rate over 70%. And 64% of the 70% is using Agile methods. This is the statistics of 2012. And in 2013, they were preferring Agile methodologies, and the reason they were preferring Agile methodologies and Agile processes was manage changing priorities, increasing productivity and team morale. Also, they were trying to align the IT and the business. And we came down to many companies there, we worked with them, but we always had the same problem. We worked with the biggest companies. Here is a bank. This bank is in the first 3, I think. And this company is in telecommunication sector, is one of the best ones. And here is the best one in Turkey. And this is an E-Trade company. They were all happy with Scrum, but when we get out of the stage, as the consultants, as the trainers, then they lost their focus on agility, because they were busy with other stuff. So we needed to find solution for that. We need to further adapt agility into the organization. And here is the statistics of, again, 2013 about the barriers of agility. The first one was ability to change the organizational culture. You are dealing with the culture when you're talking about a new way of working. The culture is like, this is how we do things here. How are you going to change culture? It's like changing the personality of a person. It's quite hard thing. And the second barrier was the people with the right skill. And we can connect this with the perception of software engineering. Many people think that software development is not a profession. Many people think that they have to be managers to get a good salary, to have a status. But software development, what we think is software development, is a profession by itself, like being a doctor and being a lawyer. When you're 50 years old, 60 years old, you can still be developing software. That's not a problem. It has to be that way. And sometimes a software developer should get a better salary than a project manager, of course, because it is a profession. Now, we have some solutions to this part, but we need another solution to the culture part also. We have to be changing the organization's agility in a systematical manner. And what we have seen so far is Scrum has been a foundation for us. We use Scrum for delivering projects. What else can we do about agility? That's the question. And organizations became desperate to be agile in that sense. They were only using Scrum. And as an entire organization, as a whole organization, they weren't agile enough still. And they couldn't anchor agility into the organization. And what we said, but we need the systematical approach. And organizations also should be answering some questions here, like, are you agile? Are you becoming agile? Or you have no idea, or you didn't even consider. You also should have some people responsible from agility in the organization. Are they the developers, managers, executives, consultants, trainers, the new methodology? Who is responsible from agility in the organization? Do you know it? Or do you have a situation like your boss has told you you need to be agile? So you went out and find a training company, you got the proper trainings. Yes, the training company made some money, but it doesn't guarantee that your organization will become agile. So that's why we need the systematical part. And what we usually say is management is measurement. You have to measure your progress towards agility somehow. You can't do this in the development level. The development teams, the Scrum teams, are working on delivering the products. They are doing that in a fast manner. But how about the management? What will the management do in that sense? Here is the framework, the Agility Path framework that Scrum.org came up with. And it's a framework within which people can manage complex organizational change required to increase agility. It's a framework again. It's not a methodology. It's not a cookbook. It's a framework. And it's based on the Scrum knowledge again. And it's a tool for continuous organizational improvement. And as Neil said, all of you saw the photo, John P. Cotter. And it's co-created by John P. Cotter because this is about the cultural change. You have to change the culture to become more agile. And you have to empower people. You need to improve the self-organization capacity in the organization. How are you going to do that? That's an important question. And why do we have complex problems when we are into change? Because change itself creates complexity. If you have unknowns more than the knowns, then you have complexity. if you don't know anything about what you are in, you are in the chaos. You can be in the chaos, and change also covers a little bit of chaos. So you should know how to deal with all of these things. So when we implement Scrum somewhere, we always said the managers are the chickens, okay? The project managers are chickens. They cannot attend to daily Scrum. They cannot attend to sprint planning or sprint retrospectives. We only accept them in the reviews if they got something to say, to give feedback. And they felt really anxious about their positions when we did that. So we got a new job for them, actually. They can manage their investment in agility and Scrum. And they can increase the value of their investment iteratively and incrementally. Again, the reason behind that is we're using Scrum, again, to manage organizational cultural change and control the risk and disruption also. So there are 3 things that we have to measure, basically. These are the most basic ones. What are we going to measure? We are going to measure how much money has been invested per person through our agility journey, and what has been the return on this investment, and are we going agile? How is our agility increased? Did it go up, down, stay the same? What's going on? Do we know it? And we have to know it. If we don't, we are not managing the return on investment. And to gain agility, we used Scrum again at the team level. We had the product backlog, we evaluated, we made releases to the market, and then we evaluated the market feedback, and then we donated the product backlog again. So that was our loop. And the management was inspecting this process. And now, in the Scrum for the Enterprise, it's the Agility Path Framework, the same names. We have an Agility Index. We should find an index that how we are doing towards agility. And we don't have the product backlog now. Rather than product backlog, we have the practice backlog. We should have some practices to implement into the organization. Like, we are not going to, one example, we are not going to measure individual performances anymore. We are going to be measuring the team's performance. This can be a practice that you can implement, or implementing test-driven development in your organization, in the entire organization. This can be a practice again. But you have to be evaluating this practice. Are you doing good with it or not? How are you going to do it systematically? So we have the practice backlog and the evaluation part here. We will be evaluating the practices implemented, either subjectively or objectively, how we can measure that. And here, who is going to do that? It's another question. Now we have the agility teams here. And the agility teams will be managing this entire change process. So we have the domains that they are the perspectives that we look at the organizations. We have 5 domains. The first one, enterprise domain. And enterprise domain has its own agility team. And in those agility teams, there will be managers, executives, and there can be people from the development teams also. It's about how you look at the organization from the enterprise view. And we have some practices, specific practices in that view, in that perspective, in that domain. The enterprise domain has communication practices, people practices, motivational practices, and lean practices also. And on the quality domain, we have the tools, we have the frameworks, guidelines to have better quality in the organization, in the products. And on the value domain, this is where PMO resides also. If you have a PMO in the organization, you can position PMO there. We will be implementing practices about release management, about portfolio management. Those are the specific areas that we are going to be working with. And on the productivity level, we have the clean code practices. We are going to be positioning test-driven development maybe here, behavior development, continuous integration, and kind of like practices there. And on the process domain, we have the process. It can be Scrum, it can be Kanban, or any Agile process that we use. Are we doing what those best practices told? And we will be evaluating that. And what are we going to have when we evaluated all of these things? Let's look at it. So we said that we have to measure the progress. So we had the practice backlog, we had the evaluation part here, and evaluation can have its own backlog also. And agility team is responsible from all of these change efforts. And we have the radar chart to see the domains. And when we implement some practices in the organization, we have to see how our agility has changed. And we need some metrics to see if our agility changed or not. Let's look at these metrics. We have some organizational and foundational metrics, which says we have implemented this and that practices, and then we saw that our employee satisfaction, our customer satisfaction, our release frequencies, release stabilizations came to that point. So we became more agile by implementing those practices. You can say that. You can measure that your organization became more agile by implementing the practices in hand, and Scrum is one of them. It's a foundation, and it's one of them only. You can have many of the practices here. And how did your usage index change? How is your innovation rate changed? You can see it. And you have to be making some reviews. Those lines, the different colored lines, show that the reviews that you did on specific times. Let's say we had a review today, and we are going to make the same review 2 months later. And we are going to see the change, if it happened or not. And here is the last part. So we had Scrum here, or we can have, as I told, other agile processes. It can be anything that is going to make you agile. And when you are working with agility in this part, when you're trying to make your products more agile, you also have to be dealing with the organizational part of it, which is you're going to be working on your organization's agility with a systematic approach. And it's called the agility framework. And it's a conceptual framework that you create a team of managers, executives, and team members, anyone from the organization, anyone from the departments. And then those people will be managing the change process in a systematic way again. But this time, we don't have the product backlog, we have the practice backlog. And this time, we need to deal with the culture also. And it's hard to manage the culture, because it's not something that you can manage. You have to first lead something. You have to first lead the change, and then you are going to have some vision, and you are going to have some people to go to that vision, and then you need the systematical approach to manage it. So this is that approach, this is that framework to manage cultural change. So this was what I was going to talk about, and if you have any questions so far.
Any questions? Yeah. First line. You talked a lot about metrics, but I haven't heard how to measure, let's say, if the practice of planning is used. What would you say about that?
You mean?
There is a path of agility. So I say, I want in my company that planning, somehow the practice will be
planning is bad?
Implemented, and I don't want to forget it in 2 years period, something like this. And there you have this plot where you want to see this. How would you evaluate?
Yeah.
Because you talk just like there is a subjective and objective way to calculate it, measure. So
you're right.
About the measures themselves.
Yeah. So you have the planning part, and the planning is going bad. You have to measure how you are doing with it. So the thing is, the subjective evaluation is like you are going to be looking for the rumors around. You're going to be talking to the people. Are you doing it good or not? And the second one is, are you doing good planning so that you don't have many questions during the development? And when you go to the review, did you really deliver the software that you have planned at the beginning? So you can also count here the committed and the delivered functionality. What is your rate here? You can measure that. But the thing is, but the thing with agility is that you have to be, you can't see everything on a change process. You can't see everything individually because it's a complex thing. So many things come together, and then you can see the output from some perspectives, from some views. This is how also a balanced scorecard framework works. So this is the actual results, like innovation rate. To increase your innovation rate, you should have a good quality. And planning can also be a part of it, and it can reflect to the metrics, the high-level metrics that you have measured. But in the team level, we can measure the committed and the delivered functionality, which can be an objective measure for us.
Okay, was one more hand here. So here.
So you have a separate meta team for this enterprise Scrum, which consists of other members of other teams.
Yeah.
Is it not like working on 2 different projects at the same time?
Yeah.
How is that managed? Does it impact velocity, etc.?
For the change process, you don't need to work like a full-time thing. So you can spend your 20 or 30% of your time with the change team. The change team is like a part-time team, actually. It's not a full-time kind of thing. So it's the way that the people in the agility teams work. They're actually doing their work already, but it's not about change. So if you are going to work with the change, then you are on that team, and you can spend your 20 or 30% of your time with the team, within the team. Or if you need more time to implement all of these things, then you can spend more on it. So we don't say that the people in the development teams will also be in the agility teams. They can be, but it should be still be calculated count as time that is spent inside that team again.
Okay.
It will lead to the same problems of task switching, context switching as working on multiple projects.
Yeah.
And it's also the same thing as, for example, having support work interruptions inside of the sprint. So it will have the same problems.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a bad thing at the same time.
Yeah, it's the same problem again, maybe. But the enforcing part here is we have the product owner already. So the product owner is also task switching all the time. So, and it's a reality that we already have. And the management is also always switching the tasks. The PMO is always switching the tasks. So in this way, you can be more focused on what you are doing in parallel, because implementing test-driven development is not something that you are going to go and finish in 2 weeks. It's something that will take 3 months, maybe 6 months for the entire company to adopt that practice. So they should go on parallel, right?
Okay, any more questions? Okay, so we can thank you, Ahmet, and here is a small present from us for his nice presentation. So thank you.
Thank you.
And now we all can go and have some lunch downstairs.